Hello. We bring you two stories tonight, one from Aughnasheelin, County Leitrim, and one from Amakusa. Anyone know where Amakusa is? No, it's not in Cyprus. That's Famagusta. Actually, it's in Japan.
The Amakusa Islands lie just off the southwest coast of Japan. They are underdeveloped and underpopulated by Japanese standards. Their main industry is farming, and their main export is timber from the forests that line their mountain slopes. They are little known and little visited even by the people of Japan. But in the 16th century, this little group of islands was famous both in the east and in the west. Famous for the way in which the local people had embraced the new religion of Christianity. The ruler of Amakusa had invited the Jesuits to preach in his dominion, and in 1568 his invitation was accepted by Luis de Almeida, a Portuguese doctor and missionary. Father de Almeida died in Amakusa 15 years later and was buried in what is now a Buddhist cemetery. But during these 15 years, he had transformed the face of Amakusa. Within a few years of his death, the islands were being called the Christian Isles, and churches and colleges were springing up everywhere to serve a growing Christian community. By the year 1600, more than 3/4 of the people were Christians, and many traces of their devotion still survive: rosary beads, medals and statues, especially statues of the Blessed Virgin. Then came the years of persecution, beginning on the mainland but gradually spreading to all the islands. For many years the people of Amakusa succeeded in clinging to their faith, hollowing out their statues to make them look like Buddhist incense bowls. But finally, oppressed beyond all endurance, the islanders rose in rebellion. Across this ancient bridge they marched, with the names of Christ and the saints inscribed on their banners, to face the armed might of the Japanese Empire. The slaughter that followed was terrible and complete. The Christians were butchered without mercy, men, women and children alike, and the river ran red with their blood for many days, according to the local traditions. A simple cross marks the place where the final battle took place, and those who died on either side during the brief but bloody war are commemorated by a monument in the Japanese style. It was the end of organized Christianity in the Christian Isles. Buddhist temples replaced the churches, and even the memory of the Christian martyrs was almost obliterated from the minds of men. The recent revival of interest in this forgotten page of history is largely the work of an Irish priest, Father Sean Ryle. What did you do to promote this interest in the Christian martyrs?
Well, first of all, I helped to organize the yearly celebrations in memory of the martyrs. And this is sponsored by the civil authorities. And then another aspect was an interest in the Christian graves, which are in the mountains. These were ignored really in practice, but with the help of the local communities, gradually interest increased. And
well, when you found the Christian graves, what did you do about them?
Well, first of all, of course, we had the ceremonies where the graves were. And we brought them into the cemetery, and we spaced them nicely.
What cemetery? In
the cemetery, we had in the Catholic cemetery. So, having consulted the tourist board and the local community, they gave us a plot of land for the cemetery, and we put them there. So they are responsible for the upkeep, but the church is responsible for the ceremonies in the cemetery.
And what ceremonies did you have, in fact?
Well, we had, at that time, we had the ordinary blessing and prayers for the dead.
When the graves were restored into
the place, yes. And the mayor and both townlands attended these with other officials.
You also responsible for discovering something about de Almeida, a Portuguese missionary. What's the significance of him?
Well, that's a very significant thing. Well, he's responsible for the introduction of Western medicine into Japan. He was the father of it. And secondly, he was the father of social welfare and a great missionary in southern Japan.
Where did he come from?
He came from Portugal. He arrived in Japan 1551. He'd no sooner arrived than he started a foundling home for orphans, and immediately he applied his medical skill. He started a general hospital, trained Japanese doctors, and the nobility of that time came to him. so much so that his fame really spread throughout Japan. And the strange thing is, all his work really was not taken into account until I took an interest in the local history.
How did you discover all this about him?
Well, I got as I mentioned a while ago, I had lecturers over to give talks on the local history. And also I got this Mr. Kataoka to write some articles on the significant aspects of the local history. Oh yes, historian, yes. And among the articles he wrote one on Dr. Almeida. And in this it was very obvious that this was a great man who wasn't commemorated in any significant way.
You mean great apart from the Christian sense?
Oh yes, apart from the Christian, great as a doctor, and as he was a surgeon as well in that time.
And what was medicine like in Japan? Was he responsible for a lot of innovations and development of medicine?
Oh yes, he was. Even some say that some of the instruments which were used in those days are still in Japan. They're naturally kept.
The surgical instruments that he used?
The instruments that which he used or his associates used.
What sort of reaction did you get from medical circles in Japan about this?
Well, really, it was strange, really, because even the Catholic Medical Association were not really aware of this man's work. And furthermore, the General Medical Association of Japan, when I had an interview with the president of that, Dr. Takemi, he said, wait for a few days till he consults some historians. So he consulted them, and having found that my proposition was correct, he supported me. He came down for the ceremonies. We had some big ceremonies for him, really, because being the father of Western medicine, and we organized the 4th centenary of his work. And for these ceremonies, the Japanese government were represented by Mr. Kuroki. The Charter Affairs represented the Portuguese government. The papal internuncio, Archbishop Maria Kanno, was present with the other Japanese archbishop, Bishop Yamaguchi, the bishop of the place, Bishop Fukuhori, and other bishops with other dignitaries. In fact, really, there was 1,000 pilgrims came from all parts of Japan for the occasion. Special boats and so forth brought them.
The Almeida celebrations were a tremendous occasion for the people of Amakusa. The presence of so many important people from outside, the rediscovery of a glorious period in their island's history, and the deep Japanese reverence for the memory of the dead, all these combined to make it a memorable event for the island people. The main ceremony, the unveiling of the memorial to Father Almeida, took place at night in the Christian Memorial Cemetery in Hondo City, the capital of Amakusa. The mayor of Hondo and Father Ryle together performed the ceremony of unveiling the monument, which took the form of a massive stone pillar, in which was inset a bronze relief showing Father Almeida with one of the orphan children to whom he devoted so much of his life. After the solemn prayers of blessing had been recited by the bishop in whose diocese Amakusa lies, there followed a revealing and typically Japanese ceremony, the presenting of a testimonial of merit to Father Ryle by the mayor of Hondo. By your dedication and cooperation, you have greatly contributed to raising the standard of Christian culture in this city. Today, on the occasion of the unveiling of the monument to Father Almeida, I wish to express on behalf of the citizens of Hondo our deep and heartfelt gratitude towards you. The testimonial went on to describe in detail some of the ways in which Father Ryle had helped to put Amakusa on the map. The setting up of the Christian monuments in Shiroyama Park, the collecting of contributions from inside and outside Japan, the erecting of the Peace Statue of Christ, the monument to Father Almeida, and the monument to the martyred catechist Adam Arakawa, the founding of the Christian Memorial Cemetery, and last but not least, the setting up of the Japanese-style Lourdes Grotto, which has become one of the popular sites in Hondo City. What were your relations with the Buddhists, and especially with the Buddhist priests, like. Are you, as a Catholic priest, conscious of animosity from the Buddhist priests now?
No, I'm not now. At one time, yes, I was. They didn't like some of the projects which I initiated. However, with the passage of time, we became friendly, so much so that they came to functions at the church, and the last time they came, I was really surprised, so were we all, when the chief Buddhist priest announced publicly that he was against me at one time, but now he's not. He's praying to his gods for me. And he showed that in a very, really practical way, because he invited me to his temple for a special farewell. This was really a memorable occasion.
What do you think that this harping back to the remembering days of persecution is good and is helpful to the church in Japan?
No, I think it is, because the church is a living reality, and we're showing that the church is not either past or present, but it's always there. It's with the people.
But, I mean, a country like Japan, which is so progressive and technological and looking forward, should the church not show this image?
Oh, I agree with you thoroughly there. We must show our sense of appreciation for further development and cooperate in every way possible with the community in this direction.
In fact, when the church came first to Japan, it increased in numbers, I think, for about 100,000 in 5 or 6 years.
Yes.
Well, what is the rate now like?
Well, the rate at the moment is about 11 to 12,000 adult baptisms every year. Well,
which is very small, really, isn't it, out of 100 million people?
In relation to population, yes, but those who do come in from real good motives, and they're good Christians, and in that respect, I think they're having a great influence on the community as a whole.
Why is it so hard to get the gospel message across in a fairly sophisticated society like Japan? Is it that the people already have enough sort of material things and don't have any need for religion in their lives?
One reason, yes, because they're so taken up with material prosperity, some say they haven't time to consider religious matters. However, another aspect is the fact that Buddhism and Shintoism too, they're deeply rooted in the people, with the result that if they're going to go in for any new religion as such, they will consider the pros and cons very, very thoroughly. Another aspect, of course, is the family traditions are strong.
And this is a help to Christianity, though?
Well, in one way, yes. In one way, no. It's not a help because if a person wants to become a Christian from such a setting, he's liable or she's liable to cut herself off from that family completely, or be cut off. And that way it's a hindrance. But then when a whole family comes in, because they're so loyal as a family,
they'll follow her.
They'll follow her in, yes.
Today there are about 1,500 Catholics in Amakusa. Many of those who kneel before Bishop Fukuhori when he comes for confirmation are grown men and women who have only recently been received into the church. But there are quite a few who can trace their Christianity back to Father Almeida's time, descendants of that tiny group who survived persecution and massacre and handed down the faith from generation to generation for 3 centuries. The Christians are few, but they have an influence out of all proportion to their numbers. Now that their night of suffering is past and they can again take their rightful place in the community, they look forward and pray for the day when the churches of Amakusa will again be thronged with worshippers, and the islands themselves will live up to their old and honoured title, the Christian Isles.
That report is from Amakusa in Japan. The pace of change in the 20th century is so great that priorities sometimes get a bit mixed. For instance, in some places in Ireland, you could have a computer or a television set or even an electric carving knife. But you cannot have a tap. You know, these newfangled things over the kitchen sink that you twist and the water comes out. John McCormick reports from Auchnesheelan in County Leitrim.
This is Auchnesheelan. It's about 4 miles from Ballinamore, County Leitrim. There are 230 houses in Auchnesheelan, scattered over an area of about 25 square miles. Now, to judge from these surroundings, You might be inclined to think that there couldn't be any problem with water here. But a waterfall's not much good if you want to wash your face or fill a kettle. In fact, any water that's needed here has to be drawn by hand from the nearest well. And in many cases, the nearest well is half a mile away. The people of Auchnacheelan thought that this just wasn't good enough, and so they decided to do something about it. Emigration is the biggest problem in Leitrim. The total population figure for the county now stands at 30,000 odd, less than the Dublin parish of Drimnagh and just over half of what it was 30 years ago. Auchnacheelan is typical of the whole county. In every house there is a son or daughter, a brother or sister, working in Dublin, London or New York. And yet, once they see life in other places, it's hard to expect a young man or woman to return to the hardships of living at home, where, for instance, every drop of water has to be carried from a well, often nearly a mile away.
When you have a big washing to do, it's terrible. You have to spend the whole morning drying water, maybe go 5 or 6 times there before you have enough water in to do a couple of blankets. It's not too bad in the summertime, but in the wintertime it's terrible. Rain and frost and snow. You know, a bucket of water isn't the easiest thing to carry. It's very awkward. Splashes out and you're scared to be all wet by the time you'd have a bucket of water carried down this far. And it's very heavy too.
A project to pipe running water to every house in the district was finally tackled by the men of Auchnacheelan. Planning a scheme for such a scattered mountainous area presented many problems. From listening to the advice of engineers, contractors and the regional department inspectors, Father Brady, the local curate and organiser of the group, practically became an engineer himself.
Well, of course, the finances are a very important item in this thing, and we have to keep it going.
I'm sure it is.
Then we're cutting out this this road here. It's cutting out, and this link has been made across here.
Yeah, we'll come across this way, so we will, with the pipe in order to take in these extra houses along there. And this link then will be no longer necessary. We'll be able to feed it over either towards the Auchnacheelan Church.
The first problem to be solved was finding a suitable source. The water comes from this lonely lake at the top of Slieve and Erin, nearly 2,000 feet up. The terrain is so boggy and inaccessible that no heavy machinery could be brought up here. So a trench 3 feet deep and nearly 3 miles long had to be dug by hand. It was a formidable task, but the men of the area, mainly farmers, were determined to finish the job, and anyone who had a shovel or a spade lent a hand. Even though at times the clouds were down around them, they kept at it, and bit by bit, the trench that would carry the pipeline was dug down along the side of the mountain. What was your own reaction when you first heard about this scheme?
Well, it wasn't too optimistic anyway when I looked up here and saw the ground that we had to travel over and everything like that. But I think the biggest problem was just the getting started up here and getting going on it. And when we got going here, there was tremendous enthusiasm, and it seemed to work itself along that we weren't long getting down this far at all.
Why wasn't there a scheme like this started far earlier, years ago?
Well, I don't know why there wasn't a scheme started earlier, but sure, I suppose it's better late than never anyway. There was talk before my time about bringing the water from this lake. It's 40 years ago. It was talked about then as being the main source of supply for the town of Ballinamore, which is 7 miles away. It fell through at that time. Ballinamore got their supply from different source. I don't think it's very satisfactory. And 40 years later, we've come back here and we're going to bring it from here now for our own use here in Auchnacheelan.
What was the most difficult part of the work?
Well, I'd say the most difficult part of the work was the thoughts of having to come up here and get started on it. I think from we actually got up here, we had got over the biggest difficulty. The getting up here in the beginning of it and just getting it started and getting going on it, was, I think, the most difficult part of the operation.
In Aughnasheelin, the Mass is the central event of the week. The people come to pray, but they also hear announcements affecting their daily lives. Perhaps a new department grant or a new emigrant advisory service. Today, it's a meeting of the Water Scheme Committee.
There will be a meeting of the Committee of the Group Water Scheme today at 3 o'clock. There has been a layoff in work on this scheme for some time now because we have been making a decision on the siting of the reservoir for the scheme. Now that decision has been made and we are ready to go ahead now full steam with the work. Therefore, I am asking every man who is physically able and participating in the scheme to come out during this coming week. We want to make an all-out effort during this coming week. And if we can get through that effort on this coming week, the major part of our voluntary work contribution will be completed. Now, a tremendous amount of work has been done, and you people who have been working up there must take due credit for what has been done. The evidence is there for anybody who wants to go up and see it. So let us now get out. I am addressing myself, I know, to men who have done far more than their share. They've done more voluntary work than their share. I'm addressing myself to them too today. And I ask them to stay with us for another little while. To stay. I mean, we can, reach the stage when people begin to compare. And, well, one man will say, well, Jiminy, I'm up here long enough. And so-and-so didn't turn up yet. So-and-so didn't turn up yet. And that can arise, but we don't let it arise. I'm asking these people who have done so much to still continue on, to hold on, and the others who have not, to get out during this coming week. And if you're not able to come out, send up somebody in your place. So during the coming week now, an all-out effort. All heads toward the mountain now tomorrow morning, please God, good and early. And not only tomorrow, but all during this coming week. Now, I'll be up there, please God, during the week. Not as a ganger or not as an overseer. I'm up there not a time at all. I'll be up there because I'm in it with you. I'm in it with you. And we're all in it together. So as I say now, up to the mountain tomorrow morning.
Up on the mountain, the work went on. After the trench had been dug, the pipes were carried up, carefully joined together and then laid along the bottom. It is ironic that pipes to carry water have to be laid in the earth in Leitrim. The fact is that the land is already too wet. The greatest obstacle to farming in the county is the lack of natural drainage in the ground. The top layer of soil is only 3 inches deep on average, resting on a thick dauby substance. The rain is not soaked up by this subsoil, it stays on top, making the land wet and poor. Yield from the small farms is low, and so money is scarce. But few houses in Aughnasheelin are completely dependent on the land. On a market day in nearby Ballinamore, the cashiers in the town's 2 banks spent much of their time exchanging pounds, shillings and pence for dollars sent home by emigrant sons and daughters. It would have cost too much to sink a well and pump water to the houses in the scheme area, but there's no scarcity of willingness to work among the men here. So when a decision has to be made between spending money on the one hand and physical hard work on the other, it doesn't take long to decide. But even with voluntary labour, the scheme still costs a lot of money.
£40 a house, that's the money end of it, and then they have to give roughly £20 worth of voluntary labour.
And what would each of these people be earning on an average every week?
Oh, it's very small. I'd say outside of around £4.
£4?
Very outside. Some wouldn't go near it at all. Like, that's off the land, you mean, now?
Yeah, and how do they manage to run a house on £4 a week?
Well, they're not exactly running it off the land. Some men are drawing on their stamps and various other means of obtaining money. And then probably some of their children and that from abroad send the money as well. Without that, they couldn't live.
On the whole, the community were enthusiastic, but I mean, as you know, people are skeptical where there's money involved or finance involved, and again, all the schemes that have been proposed to people haven't been a success, and they're often doubtful. I mean, we had the same problem arose in the development of rural electrification. People were not anxious to come in for one reason or another, and some people had objections, and those objections were doing more damage than 5 or 6 people canvassing for the scheme. The same thing arose with the water to a degree, but people are convinced now that water is a necessity about their homes. It will make life easier for them on their farms, and it'll be a great benefit for them in their domestic requirements in their homes.
Now that the work on the mountain is completed, the hardest part of the job is over, and the machine continues the trench digging. It will not be long now before the water is flowing, and there will be no further need for the women of Aughnasheelin to trudge a half-mile to the nearest well. As a community project, the water scheme in Aughnasheelin has been a success. Perhaps not a venture spectacular enough to make newspaper headlines, but nevertheless, it represented a challenge to the 65 families in this small area. Their courage and determination is an example to people of other areas with similar problems.
That was John McCormick in County Leitrim. Next week we have Cistercian Monasteries and the American Way of Life. That's Radharc, Tuesday, 7:20.